My hope is that BC and Ontario takes the butt kicking.
Whoa.
China and Russia were trying to come together and effectively form their own currency.
We need to manufacture in North America.
Honestly, my gosh, man, it's been a little while since we got a Trump reference. I'm happy about that, Neil. It just skews the numbers and no one pays attention to that. People are like, well, I hear houses in Canada are down 18%, so I should be able to get this home for discounts. Like, no, here last week, 45% of homes in Halifax sold over ask.
More single women own homes than single men.
Women tend to... we are playing with fire here.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.
Welcome to the Master Keys podcast. We're back. We apologize for missing a week. Today's episode is going to be great because we're all fired up because we missed a week. So we're rejuvenated and ready to chat.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of finding our legs a little bit with a few different subjects. We're now effectively 2 months into the year, which is crazy to say that already. It's just flying by. So I think we can start to get a sense of, what's going on with the markets, what might be happening in the rates, because we've had this idea of holding rates for a little while and what that's going to mean. And we're getting more numbers out on the job market and all this stuff. And so excited to unpack some of that. But do we want to fire off the new followers, because we really appreciate you guys following and listening along, and a few of you sharing us to your stories. If you're listening to this right now, if you're watching this, sharing our stuff to your stories makes a huge difference in our engagement. We see the numbers. It matters. So when you guys do that, when you're just in the car, and it fires us up, but like when you're just in the car and you throw it on or what have you, pitch your laptop, it really means a lot. So thank you, and please continue to tag us in those.
100%. And before I say the new subscribers, I just want to talk about what we're going to be talking about today. Our main topic is how to buy a multi-unit. Yeah. A lot of you guys probably already have one or are potentially looking to go from buying single families, duplexes, triplexes, and get into your first purpose-built 6, 8, 10, 12 plex. So we just want to do a high-level talk about it. If you don't follow our Patreon, it's on there, and we've talked about the website 100 times. We are working on it. My computer's really slow, and it's hard to edit a website, but I have it open, and I am slowly editing it. I'm going to get a new laptop. Recommendations for laptop, let me know. I'm not a Mac person, so a PC would be great. I have an XPS right now, but it's getting pretty soft.
Yeah, the screen on it's pretty busted too.
The screen I busted immediately after purchasing it.
What are you doing with that laptop?
Anyways, I'm gonna call these guys out right off the hop. So our new 5, Mitchell Fong, AD, just AD, nothing else. I don't even know how they got that handle, but okay. U Eggers, okay. J Tustin 597, and Reed Britnell.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate all of you. There's some sus handles in there.
Yeah, we'll skip over those.
We're gonna skip over a couple of those, but those are our new 5. Before we get into this, I have some headlines here that I want to get your opinion on.
Yep.
What's going on? How has the last 2 weeks been? You went to TO, you were balling out. I saw you walking down on the court. You were slapping high fives with all the Raptors, and then you shook hands with Drake. It looked pretty sick.
Actually, so it was a really fun trip. I went up there with a couple buddies, and one of them, his dad's a lawyer whose partner is, I think, the CEO of like a really, really major real estate company. It's crazy. I did a quick search of them, and they own 100 buildings in Hamilton. Not like in Toronto, not like across Ontario, but just in Hamilton. So they like own all of Hamilton, which was funny because I dated a girl from Hamilton, and this guy knew my ex-girlfriend's dad and had some pretty hilarious stories about that guy. But we went out to this restaurant called Harbor 60.
Okay. I haven't been
which people from Toronto will know. It's kind of a ballin' restaurant. It was ridiculous. Had a steak. So this was a 55-ounce Wagyu tomahawk steak.
55
ounce. It's meant to be shared from the table. And honestly, you know me. I like my steaks.
Yeah.
And I order them big. This was probably more like a 35-ounce steak with a 20-ounce bone. But how much do you think it was? I probably overhyped it now, so you're going to go with some crazy number.
It's got to be over $1,000.
No, it's not that.
Really? Under $20 an ounce?
It was $455.
Oh, that's a good deal.
That's a good deal. I guess it's like 7 little steaks.
Yeah, man. I had Wagyu in Vegas, and it was like a I think a 12 ounce, and it was like $750. I didn't. Somebody at my table did, but
Yeah.
I had a little piece of it. But
Could have a little sliver, please. So I can have some more.
But
That'll be $50
Yeah.
for that mouthful.
yeah, no, that seems like a decent deal. That is expensive, and it is mind blowing to think that you can spend that much on a single. And you need to buy all your sides.
Then you have to buy
separately.
your sides
You have to
separately.
buy your
That did
sides.
not come with garlic mash and a veggie medley, if you were wondering.
Yeah.
You had to buy those separately, but it was really great. Yeah, so cruising around Toronto, man, it's...
The 6. Was it all the hype? Did it feel great? Did the real estate feel bussin'? Were you like,
no.
did you come back? Did you want to get like a curly hair doing some Yeezys, or where are you sitting now?
I was going to do a Toronto accent there, and I'm so glad I stopped myself from trying. I don't love Toronto. No disrespect to our Toronto listeners out there.
And why is that?
I don't know. Maybe it's because I haven't found my niche in the neighborhood or where we were in a great location. It just all feels a little bit sad there. Like there's just so much of everything. And what I found really interesting is that so many of the buildings are just run down to crap. And like all these little shops are in these buildings. And I know they're all waiting to eventually tear down the whole street. But man, the whole city looks like they're all just waiting to tear down the street because it's either brand new, stunning, or just like
Shitbox.
the number of pigeons going in and out of these stores. It's crazy. Like there's just
you mean actual pigeons for those that are listening?
Yeah, that's not a metaphor. I mean,
Okay, I'm just throwing. I'm just checking.
rats.
Just checking.
Like, yeah, and I'm just thinking about the buildings I own and how, if there's something wrong, I'm just like, ooh, I need to get this fixed, right? All this doesn't look great. And these just like have open air holes in through the soffits. And
on one note, not to go back to this, but they have a lot of tenancy rules and rent controls. And this was the same in Vancouver. I don't know if you remember when we did the pod after I got back from Vancouver, and I was like, it's a condo building worth $1 trillion next to an apartment building that's dilapidated, just run down as shit. Railings are rusted off. There's holes. There's all these pigeons, literal bird pigeons, flying in and out of the buildings. I think that feeds into it. I got to ask, did you see any cool cars? Was there a car you saw and you're like, holy shit?
Man, I will say that, I'm not a big car guy. You know this.
Yes.
But there was a lot of G-Wagons there.
Everyone, they're like RAV4s in Toronto.
Yeah. So that was the one thing that stood out. I mean, there were nice cars, but there was nothing too crazy.
Okay.
But just a lot of G-Wagons, really nice ones cruising around.
Standard commuter vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was good, man. It was good.
Okay, interesting.
Had a fun time. Watched some Raptors games.
Yeah, that'd be sick. I don't think I've been to a Raptors game. That would be super fun.
Yeah, it was a
and
good
you were
time.
sitting real close to the court, which is badass.
Yeah, and my buddy Matt, he knows all of like the refs in Canada because he's a big ref, and so he happened to know the scorekeeper that was working the game. So we were actually down behind the scorekeeper, and
You click a button.
the boys literally pressed the horn.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah,
That'd be super fun.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. So
Um,
you were away as well.
I went
BC?
further west. Yeah, so I flew into Calgary and then I drove into BC. I was in Revelstoke. For anyone who is big into snow, skiing, mountain biking, outdoor sports, Revelstoke is kind of a hype ass spot, and it used to be kind of like a secret, like super narrow spot. As time's gone on, it's become very popular. But I went there to snowmobile, and unreal. Like the weirdest thing for me was Halifax has no snow. Landing in Calgary, I kind of expected it being out west, cold, blah, blah, blah. They'd have a ton of snow. It looked the same as Halifax. When I got off the airplane, I was like...
Toronto was like +9. We were walking around every single day.
Yeah, it's
It
February.
It was strange, man. I don't know what's going on.
Same in
You
Calgary.
love fresh pow pow more than any East Indian person I've ever met in my entire life.
So many people. So if you follow me, I posted a bunch of stories of just like the snow and like the mountains and then like me ripping in the sleds and stuff.
Yeah.
So many people responded and were like, this is so out of character. Like, they're like, you're not designed or cut out to be out there.
Oh no, good for you, man. It looked fun for sure.
I don't know. It's just, it's super fun. Sledding out there is like something else. If any of you have snowmobiled, if you haven't done like crazy amounts of powder, like you usually are driving the snowmobile, in that much snow, you're literally surfing the machine. Like because the snow is like 4 feet deep. So you literally start up, you rev up on top of the snow, and you're just pin throttle and you just lean. Like you don't do anything with the steering. You just lean, like you push your feet down, and the sled like carves and turns. It's kind of like riding a snowboard, but it's like a 500-pound machine. So anyways, super cool. Enjoyed it. Real estate out there is popping like everywhere else.
Specifically though, Well, you stopped by Alberta on your way, and I've got some stats about how strong Alberta is relative to the rest of the country, and also just how skewed these numbers that you keep hearing are. But we're going to get to that in a bit here.
Oh yeah, and in Calgary, it was popping off. There's stuff being built everywhere. There's office towers being converted into condos, and then obviously within the mountain towns, again, many of you know, but mountain towns are disgustingly expensive. Like millions and millions and millions of dollars. I think the cheapest house in Whistler is like $2 million. And so Revelstoke is kind of becoming the same thing. They had some townhouses there, brand new build for like $700K.
It's not bad, actually.
No. On the mountain, though, like to get a lot for a home on the ski hill started at around $1 million.
For the lot.
Yeah. But what was kind of cool is they came with a helicopter pad. That's also
Pad ready.
Pad,
That's new
literally
definition of
pad ready. They come with a house pad and in the backyard a helicopter pad. And I was like, I had to ask our guide, I was like, what the hell are people doing with this? Because I was like, are they flying from Calgary to Revelstoke? He said a bit of that, but the weather's so bad, it's more so for people who heli ski. He said,
Yeah, I was going to say, it would be for them to go up to the hill. Yeah.
yeah, it's for them to rip up to the top of the mountain. I was like, that's actually sick. Imagine getting up in the morning and like just walking out your back door and hopping in the helicopter and off you go skiing. Like that's some gangster
If there's a
shit.
smart company there that would have like, get it written into the covenants that they have to use these particular helicopters if you want third party flying in, flying out.
Yeah.
And be a company that would just crush it on that. But
Yeah.
cool. Well, that's all very exciting. That's our travels. That's why we missed a week, but glad to be back at it. And
Yeah. No
yeah.
place I'd rather be. I'd rather be here than on a mountain.
Truly. I do have a little admission of something that I was wrong on. So you may remember at the end of last year, we did some takes like what we thought was going to be hot and what was going to be not for this year. I had it in my head that there'd be
Stripes
some.
were going to be super hot.
Wow. Horizontal stripes. I went with it. I had this thought that there could be some good deals out there on small single family homes.
Yeah.
And that maybe that would be a nice little pickup because you get them vacant, they're easy to finance, they appreciate really well and all these things.
Duplex conversions,
all of these reasons. Unfortunately, because of what's happened with the increased rates, it's driven so much competition into the lower price points that, in fact, those small, little, affordable homes are the hardest part of the market right now.
Yeah.
They are on fire. Like I'm talking stuff sub 400. It is nuts out there under 400,000.
You just sold one under 400. How did that go? How many offers? How many showings?
I think we had 22 offers on about 73 showings.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You were priced a little soft, but I wouldn't say that soft.
Well, you know what was
Especially
funny
relative
is
to this market.
I said to this guy, and he's a good friend and the client, and I said, listen, I don't know really what this home is worth. Because we had it on the market in, I want to say 4 years ago. And we kind of stumbled and started. We had an accepted offer. It didn't go through. Interestingly, one of the people that offered on this was the person who backed out of our deal 4 years ago. This old guy. He backed out.
No
and
way.
said,
He came back around.
He came back around, and he offered, I mean, probably $90,000 more than he offered 4 years ago and still was not close to getting it. But I basically said, listen, this is where we were at before. Let's tack on 30% to our asking price and just see. Right? Because, 4 years ago, we're conservatively up 30%.
Yep.
Even with what we gave back last year. And it went crazy, man.
How far over ask did you go?
Well, we're not firm yet, but significantly. I don't think we had a single offer under the asking price or even at the asking price, and we had 22 offers.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had one in Clayton Park that was at $399. It was the same. I think we had 16 offers. There was a place over in Dartmouth that was $350 for a semi. That had 18 last count. So that it's really under 400, but even I would say under 450, incredibly competitive right now.
Okay, now I'm going to bring this up then because this is one of the things I want to talk about. But yeah, I agree with you on the price point. But then you look at a place like San Francisco, which has been hot for the last 50 years, pretty much since the first piece of technology came out. Through the pandemic, they were hot for the most part. Office was taking a beat down. But now their housing's taking a beat down, and they've lost 42% of the gains that they experienced over the last 3 years in the last 6 months. So they've
lost 42% of the gains
in the last 3 years. In the last 6 months,
that's not that far out of line with, say, like Toronto and things like that. If you go from the absolute peak, because Canada is down now from its absolute peak. I think I've got it here, and we'll bust into it here in a second. But I think Canada from its absolute peak, which is a year ago, is down about 18%.
So why do you think, like, what's the differentiator between cities? And I was thinking about this. It's like how you always talk about how countries compete for people. On a more micro scale, cities within their countries are going to have to fight for people too. And is it like, what is it just affordability? Because like, or what's going on there?
So there's a couple things that I think are going on. One, California is having this little exodus, and there's all kinds of reasons, environmental, taxation. The tech sector is also aggressively relocating to Texas, right?
East.
So all of these things are happening simultaneous, and that's obviously going to have some downward pressure. What's interesting about numbers, too, is realize, like, what I just said was the predominant, the houses that are doing best are the lower end stuff.
Yeah.
So when you get a sample of 100 homes that sell, you are not taking a full cross section across all price points, really.
No.
The stuff that's moving more right now is the lower end stuff. So that's playing into it to some degree.
So cities that are made up on average of more lower end stuff are most likely to do better.
Most likely. Even here in our local market, like what's going on is the stuff that's, I think if we were to really get into the nuance of it, I'd say everything under 550, very, very busy. Everything probably like above 9 is still pretty strong because people, the 550 and below are the people who used to be able to get approved for 625 and 650 and 700, whatever it was. Now they can't. So they're being forced downward. And the people that have budgets over 900 grand in our local market, and this price point would be different in other markets, in our local market, they don't care about the interest rate. They're pretty well off. A few points here and there isn't going to change their planning.
No.
Right? So what's kind of getting hurt the most and what seems to be slowest in our market is like that 6 to 8. 6 to 8 right in there because they're people who are maybe, a bit more price sensitive and rate sensitive than people 9 and above. And there's less of them now because a lot of them got squeezed down maybe into the 6 range.
They
as
lost
things got
100
tough.
grand off their approvals.
Yeah.
So I get that part. I guess my thing is, like, why did this shit not happen in the past? Because, and when I talk to my older, we'll say more experienced investors and clients and friends, one thing that had always been harped to me is like, go where people make their money. Go where people need to work. And that's where it's a great place to invest. And that was always true. Downtowns were always where people went to work, right? You have all of the jobs there, and you had high-paying jobs. And on average, the real estate around there appreciated the fastest, was worth the most.
Yep.
In cities as a whole, that's where people go to work, and so it's worth more versus being out in the countryside where there's still lots of people working out there, but not as high a density. But now it's like we have an influx of people here. I wouldn't say that we're having an influx of jobs to match that number of people. The migration east in the States definitely sounds more supported because like Texas is having an oil boom. Technology companies are setting up in Texas, they're setting up in the Carolinas, they're setting up in Florida. I guess, I don't know. I'm just like, what's
Go
changed?
where the taxes are lowest.
Yeah, well, see, but here we have high taxes. And so I'm like, is it the fact that we can now remotely work?
Ooh, I got tons of good stuff on that as well. So I do really feel that increasingly it's a tax-related issue, and I don't think that bodes well for us here in Nova Scotia. But it's not a coincidence that places like Texas, Florida, and Alberta are doing best in these times and have a lot of companies moving there. I think that's just common sense. And if you look at environments where maybe people start looking at their bottom line more closely, and you can point directly to after-tax dollars.
Yeah, we can shave 5% off by making this move. And if you're dealing with $20 million, that's $1 million in your pocket every year.
Right? It kind of goes without saying, and I think that's going to continue to be a motivator. With this work from remote thing, I got to bring this up because I want to make sure I get the stat right, but for some reason, I got a lot of joy out of this.
I'm still convinced VR is going to really push this thing.
So we talked about the Great Resignation. Like people who've been listening to this for a while, we talked about the Great Resignation. People are quitting their jobs, saying, no, life's too short. I want a different job. I'm going to pivot, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
A study came out, and they said the Great Resignation is now the Great Regret. Because listen to this, man. Listen to this. 80% of job hoppers wish they hadn't quit their old jobs. And that members of Generation Z are the most regretful.
Wow.
Yeah. 80% of the people that left for greener pastures are now saying, that probably wasn't the right move. Now,
Why?
probably
Did they
that
ask why?
80%, probably 75% of them went into real estate. So that's a big reason.
75% of the world's ball girls quit their job and got the real estate license.
Wow. Whoa. Some of you are going to feel targeted. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. So, and another thing that I found...
Does it say why?
Kind of,
is it an income thing?
no,
a
it's not an income thing.
relationship
That's
thing?
actually was really interesting because more often than not, they were leaving for more income. What they realized is that in hindsight, what they valued more was contentment. They missed their coworkers, and in a lot of cases, they had actually switched fields to some degree, and they missed their old field. And people who study
Have ice in your veins, make the money.
But people who study, worker contentment,
Satisfaction, yeah.
know that wage actually isn't as high up there on that list as you might think.
Yeah, I believe
Some people are money motivated, but not everyone. Other things like autonomy, workplace culture, all that plays into it more. But think of this, and I know you're a bit more arm's length now, but how many properties that were bought during COVID came back up for sale, and you call the agent and go, what's the story here? Because my client's going to ask, and they say they got offered a job back home.
A ton.
And
I'm seeing so many of them. It's insanity.
Yeah, so I have clients who just bought a place, and the same deal. People came out from Ontario. They were here. They were excited about it. Then their old employer was like, hey, will you come back for this amount more? And they're like, you know what? I kind of missed it anyway. Yeah,
So
back they go.
So okay. So you're saying all this now. Does that mean that great exodus and great regret's going to result in places like Toronto, California, like Seattle? Seattle's been fine the whole time, but
Popping back again?
yeah. Are they going to show strong? Are they going to come through and be like, this is going to be like the it's like an old wives' tale of like, we always said this is the best location. And I know there's blips and there's ups and downs, but at the end of the day, these big city cores and like these big booming centers always win. And so you have these small wins outside of it temporarily, but realistically, they're always going to go back to that. I was thinking about that, and I'm like in places like locally here, I'm like, I know we don't have that high ratio of Airbnbs, but if all the Airbnbs come back on, people start moving away.
I think the difference
start having
is
a turn in the market.
I think the difference is, say someone that moved out east from Alberta or BC or Ontario, their employer was still sitting there in that city. They just moved out here for a different company in most cases. Their employer never left. In the case of, say, San Francisco, if the employer leaves,
That's a different story.
It's a different story. Because you're not going back to what you knew before. You would be going back to the city you knew before, but with a different employer. So when the employers start to move, that means something.
So you're telling me that all of my experienced, aka old investors, telling me to go where the work is.
But the work has moved to these other states.
Exactly.
Yeah, like
so that's what you need to be following. So it's not as much an affordability issue. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at, because we always talk about how like that's our big sell.
But
it's it's affordable out here to come out here and buy a house.
But it has to be affordable for the employers too.
Yeah, so,
right?
So taxes attracts the employers, and the employers attract the people.
Yeah. And if you have good jobs, all of a sudden your life gets a little bit more affordable. And what's interesting is places that are affordable for companies to work tend to also be affordable for the individuals to work, because
Surprised Alberta's not a bigger boom town.
it's pretty big. Alberta's
It's
pretty
big.
good runs.
Yeah, Calgary. I mean, I know Calgary's big, but I'm surprised it's not like huge. Because they have a lot of industry, man.
Yeah.
Like they have a ton of industry, and then they're close to the mountains, so there's a lot of lifestyle there too.
Yeah,
They
it's
have
maybe a little
professional
chilly.
sports teams. Yes, it was the same.
I mean, what's Calgary? The third biggest city in the country?
I know.
So, I mean, it's pretty big.
I guess. I feel like I'm more like I like Calgary more than Toronto. I think. Yeah, I do.
I might too. I don't know. I've got another one though, because it's in the same vein. And this, interestingly, I came across this completely separate. I wasn't searching down something, but almost the same percentage, like a huge percentage of remote workers are headed back to the office, and or substituting their home office for cafes and pub workspaces because they're finding it too expensive to work from home.
Whoa. What the hell are they doing at home? Uber Eating Starbucks in the morning? Like, what the
heating
hell?
costs.
What? Were they not heating their houses before?
Man, it's cheaper to take a pack of lunch and go to work or whatever.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they say they're spending too much on heat being at home and they'd rather be at the office.
Because they're what?
Yeah. They said it's more expensive to work from home.
That must have been one person in the survey. It was just like,
Well, I think there's also probably a lot of
I definitely think there's like loneliness maybe, or like
there'd be
you-
loneliness.
yeah,
for
you
sure.
miss that like and like for cooperative projects, like it's a lot easier when you're at the office because in 2 seconds you can just be like, yo,
A lot of employers are also calling you back in, and I know it sounds funny, but
do you think
heating-
office is going to come back with a vengeance because they're converting all these office towers into residential? Do you think office is going to come back with a vengeance? I know there's a few developers, some of the old experienced investors that I keep talking about that are building offices here, which is funny because we have massive vacancy. And
I think offices will come back a little bit for sure.
because they're all going to
Man,
get ripped.
Do you know how much it costs to change the toner in your printer?
Oh, dude. I just buy a new printer every time, which I know is stupid because the cartridges that come in the printer are like 20% full. But literally every time I'm like holding the thing and it's like $80 for the thing for the cartridge and the printer's like $89.97 and I'm like,
That's amazing.
Well-
I just buy a whole new printer. This guy.
how
Us for more really good financial advice.
many people have 36 printers sitting around? I'm telling you right now, it's gonna be a bunch of people. It's gonna be a bunch of people. I
Oh
have
my
printers
God.
all over my house. It's messed. And then they finally made like the EcoFill refillable one, but it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Realistically, I don't print that much shit anymore. I usually
Yeah.
I go to the Remax office late at night and I print all of our stuff. That's
You're
how
going
Chandler and
into
I
the
met. Really,
office.
is like Saturday at like 6 p.m. I roll up. I'm like, who's this person that's at the office? I thought I'm the only idiot here.
He spooked me.
Chandler's in there buried in paperwork, printing
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, but I mean, we say that in Joseph was kind of funny, but like you are at home, you are probably spending a bit more money on groceries, which are not cheap.
Snacks.
You're heating your place. You're maybe finding you're not quite as efficient. Maybe you are doing things like using your printer more, et cetera, et cetera. So then people are going into restaurants and cafes and pubs and sitting there because,
And that costs a bunch of money.
well, but you save on heat perhaps and things like that. And then you get back to the office. But also I think there's a lot of employers who are probably like, all right, it's time to come back now.
Get a blanket. Wear a blanket while you're working. Come
Well, that
on.
may also be some of the people moving back. It's like, yeah, I could work remote work and
I think it's
live
gonna be
in
the
Nova
mix.
Scotia.
I think
and it's like,
that is the
it's not
best
that
life.
fun.
I think that's the best life is the mix where you're like 3-4 days in the office and you kind of pick and choose. You can take days off when you need to, or like work from home certain days just for deliveries or random appointments and shit. Like I think that actually is the best.
Yeah, hybrid.
Flexible work.
Yep.
Hybrid.
100%, man. I think so too.
Because the 5 days in where you're just stuck at your desk like a labor camp is no fun. What are you gonna say? You got something to say? You're gonna yell at me?
Well,
I can tell you.
I've got a few other news things I wanted to get into.
Yeah.
And it's so we talked about this and my concern about inflation stickiness, right? That we did all these things, we jacked the rates, and we're trying to push the inflation down. And the Bank of Canada, kind of in line with other central banks, said we're going to take a break now. We're going to see how this works. And I don't know. Still, the labor markets are super strong. Wages are going up. The economy's still kind of humming along. And the numbers that came out of the States were not great. Inflation isn't going down at the same rate it was before. Job market strong. Same thing as here. And so now there's been this concern that this pause won't be a pause for very long. And then, in fact, rates may go up again. Like, rates have already started to go back up in the States again. And Bank of Canada said, well, we do kind of reserve the right to raise them again if we think it's not heading in the right direction.
They do reserve the right to bend us at any moment, and they have. Yeah, I mean, I debate my life every single day on where everything's going, as I'm sure you are aware, and I'm sure most of the listeners are well aware of. I'm the biggest thing. I think one of the biggest things that drives our economy is real estate in Canada and pretty much in North America. And we are in an absolute shortage, so prices are continuing to go. And even though rates went up and a bunch of projects got paused, guess what? That didn't take away all the people that needed places to live. And so it actually ended up putting more upwards pressure on the real estate market, which we're now experiencing. And so it's going to cause a big jump in demand again. I was having that moment today and I'm like, shit, I should probably pre-order a bunch of materials and stuff because I have a feeling that it's going to go up a bunch and our manufacturing sector hasn't really grown. It kind of brings me back to the thing I was saying before, that I think one of the best ways that we're going to tackle this inflation and really a lot of the issues that we face is we need to manufacture in North America. Kind of what Trump has been screaming about when he came in. Honestly,
oh my gosh, man, it's been a little while since we got a Trump reference. I'm happy about that, Neil.
I'm just saying that they can raise interest rates a ton, but if people still need to buy shit, it's like we said, like they're going to keep buying the houses. We still need cars. We still need food. And if you've injected an extra 500,000 people into the country and then done nothing else, like, isn't that like so I'm like,
I know, man. I hear you. Like,
two things have to, it's either going to start doing a ton of manufacturing locally, which I thought was really interesting. I was in a meeting. This is an aside. I was in a meeting last week, and it was one of these importers, and we import everything from China pretty much. All products come from China. And he said blinds, which would make sense. Like, it's a plastic paste product, small bit of technology and the little lifters. To most people, that probably seem like the perfect thing to manufacture in China, and it would be expensive here. He priced it out, and he said it's actually cheaper for me to make blinds in Canada. So he's opening a blinds factory here. And I was talking to somebody else the other day about another...
Because shipping's so high right now.
Well, but shipping's down now. And he said he can still manufacture locally for cheaper because now in China, the cost of like labor and things have shot up a lot. There's a lot of growth taking place there. And so it's no longer super affordable to do it. And with demand and everything, they've brought their prices up. And so he's like, you know what? I can actually manufacture here more reliably, quicker. I can get it out quickly, and the quality's better, all these things for less. And so I'm like, oh, that's an interesting change of pace. And I think that's going to be really important to see. But like I said, the two things I was getting at are, we either need to start manufacturing here, or they're going to cut immigration.
Yeah, and oh gosh, we've talked a lot about that, and I hear you. It's a double-edged sword, and we're trying to play both sides of it, and it's just backfiring. Like, the situation is probably getting worse, and I always have this little nagging thing in my spine when the market starts to really bubble again. It's like, okay, if the market's bubbling though, inflation can't be going down. It just can't be, right? But this is my last thing that I want to get into, my little list of things I wanted to talk about here is, and I said this before, only pay attention to the news that is relevant to your area. So we have this obsession as a country with, first of all, with Toronto. I know it's just there. NBC, but especially when it comes to real estate. So I'm just going to fire some things at you. This are year over year. So there's also, and Andrew Stevens made this great point, so true. You're going to hear all of this bad news that's year over year. Oh my gosh, year over year, we're down. It's because this time last year, the wheels were run off the bus. Like, things were going crazy. It was crazy. Yeah. It was full craziness. So everything by comparison is going to look, wow, like, oh my gosh, we're so down. So all these year-over-year numbers are coming out based on, January of last year.
Okay.
But nationally, prices year-over-year are down, just over 18%.
That's pretty aggressive.
It's pretty aggressive. Here are the
that's
highlights.
Actually huge.
Yeah, that's huge. In Ontario, all of Ontario is down 20%, 20.1%.
Okay.
Which tells you Toronto's down more than that because Toronto drives that bus.
Yep.
BC is down 16.6%. But I'm going to throw some things at you.
Okay.
Year over year, PEI is up 3.9%.
Lego PEI.
Newfoundland is up 4.3%.
That probably was one or two house sales.
Nova Scotia was only down 3%.
Okay.
Which I can tell you means Halifax is up.
Yep.
And Alberta was only down 4.9%, with Calgary is up by over 6% year over year. So stop looking at the headline, which is Canadian prices are down 18.3% year over year, and realize that in your particular area, that may not be the case. And what your home prices are doing month over month actually might be quite different, right? Because we here have been really solidly, like, since Q4 of last year, we've been maintaining. Like, so we've reached a point that's pretty solid here. And if you take out those outliers, to repeat that, Canada's down 18.3% with Ontario down 20 and BC down 16.5. You take out those two outliers, the rest of the country is, yes, down, but kind of moderately. And in most cases, it's in the periphery areas.
We kind of talked about that. I think we expected this too, to be honest.
It just skews the numbers, and no one pays attention to that. People are like, well, I hear houses in Canada are down 18%, so I should be able to get this home for discounts. Like, no, here last week, 45% of homes in Halifax sold over ask at an average of 101.5% of asking price.
Yeah.
So the one thing I want people to take away from that is look at your micro market, wherever that may be, and see what's going on there. But here, we're down a little bit year over year, but not much. And in places like Calgary, they're up. Newfoundland, up. PEI, up. So,
Yeah, no, I see
and
what
think of
you're
how
saying. I see what you're
contrary
saying.
that is to what you're hearing out there,
No, it's true.
right? You're hearing that, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. So my hope is that actually BC and Ontario takes the butt kicking that allows.
Whoa.
I am like that allows, essentially that they alone manage to slow down inflation and keep rates low. Because let's be honest, Bank of Canada does not care about us, our market here. They're looking at these bigger markets.
Don't say that. They care about everybody.
They do not, because the market is skewed towards those areas. That's why they disrupt our average numbers. Our number looks ridiculous when you say, "Oh my gosh, the country's down 18.5%," and most provinces are barely down at all.
Have you taken any more time to consider some of my international monetary policy considerations with the rate movements? And that
like
they're
your
not paying
conspiracy
attention to
theory?
any of this. Yes. Any more thought on that, or do you think the Bank of Canada is looking at us, or they're looking out at the rest of the world?
I mean, obviously, the central banks move in unison. I'm maybe not as cynical as you are, but I do think currency wars are real.
Set you straight.
Like you're saying that we're doing this to kind of contract money supply to keep our
To
currency
defend our
value.
currency.
Yeah. I think
Play
there
the
is
defense
definitely
game.
something there, because remember we had a segment on this where like China and Russia were trying to come together and effectively form their own currency.
Still on it.
And it's weird that that's getting no traction, both in the markets but also in the news
It's just a
cycle.
bunch of fucking hot air balloons that they keep popping out of the sky. That's all it's getting traction. It's like,
Yeah. I mean, there's something there for sure that we are trying to. But what then would be your explanation of why they printed so much money for a while?
to try and keep the economies alive. Because if your economy's dead,
Okay,
that's
so you
also
feel
another
that
issue.
was like genuine expansionary monetary policy.
Yes.
Okay. This contraction, though, you think is more sinister.
I don't know that it's sinister. I just don't know that it's like it has to do with what we think it has to do with. Like I think we're looking at it from a perspective of people who are borrowing money to buy real estate and to live. And I don't like, yeah, we're like, oh shit, like they're trying to rein this market in or whatever it is. And I don't think it has to do with that. Because, and like this is again, on another note, it's like the concept of the problem that we're facing is now money's expensive, so nobody's building, and now it's making the problem worse. And ultimately, it's going to make the problem worse. Because now if they lower the rates, it's going to go nuts. And even if they keep the rates here, it's going to go nuts. So it's like, I don't know that it really has to do with this. I think it's got something else. We're just a byproduct of them. Like we're something that's heavily tied to it. It's like oil prices moving up and down, gas prices moving up and down. The airline industry is not like they're doing this to screw us over. It's like, no, it's a byproduct of the fact that like the average consumer is using a bunch, or really it's a byproduct that we're not producing enough, or we can't get our hands on enough of it. It's not because they're trying to reduce the amount of people like doing air travel.
I have an interesting kind of theory that I was thinking about the other day, that the only real reason they have this foreign buyer ban on right now is because they know prices are going to be low and they don't want foreign buyers buying up at a discount.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which is in line to some degree with your point about how this is, global economics and competitiveness and, but it's not really for the good
It's
of
also
you
if our
and
currency
I,
gets devalued, it's going to be very easy for them to come in and scoop stuff up. So
especially if it's
even though
cheap.
it might not, if it might be cheaper, like as $100,000 Canadian, it might also be like 80 grand in price. But additionally, a Canadian dollar might be weaker.
Exactly.
And so for them, instead of it being 80, it's going to be like 40 or like whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Which allows them to come on and take control of our market.
Yeah.
So that feeds into my conspiracy.
It is the same.
Finally feeding into my conspiracies. This only took a year and a half, 2 years of recording. I have turned him into a conspiracist.
Well, it's also, it just shows how
conspiracy.
complicated this stuff gets, where like one thing, like you could make the same argument this is also why we're trying to suck their human capital away, right? Like we are trying to take people who are young, have families, and are employed in, desirable
Convert them into
sectors,
Canucks.
and we're trying to make them come over here and be Canadians. It's a cultural war meets people war meets currency war. Like
We need a Toronto because for a lot of people, they're coming from big cities in other countries, and Toronto's the only place that can really give them that fire.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah, interesting. Well,
do you have any other news topics
yeah,
there?
I
before
did some
we
news
go into-
topics. We just went down a really interesting path in my head.
Hey, thanks for listening to this point. Reminder, please, if you're listening to this somewhere that you can share it online, we really, really appreciate that. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, add your comments down below. Second half of this episode, Neal's got some news headlines. We're going to talk about women owning more real estate than men. That's super cool, and some other topics. Then we're going to go into our main discussion point, which is about buying your first multi-unit property. So keep listening.
You probably saw this article. Actually, I think I might have sent it to you. Or maybe we may have posted it in our story. But what are your thoughts on this? More single women own homes than single men in 48 out of 50 states. And listen, considering the fact that on average, women earn only 83% as much as men do.
Man, who commented on this and they said, yeah, it's because of divorce, the woman gets the house.
I don't know. Where was it?
know.
Was it
Who
on one of our
commented that?
posts?
Someone commented
on
that.
our post?
I can't remember, but I mean, you like that one, eh? Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised in a lot of ways because I don't have any data on this, but a lot of women I know seem to be a little bit more fiscally conservative and are better savers, quite frankly.
More financially educated?
Perhaps, or at least more, I don't know. I know less women that buy dumb shit than guys and ruin their credit in university because they took a credit card that they got in the res.
Is this the time to attack me, Chandler?
No, but like I've known some guys who have still have bruised credit because literally they signed up for a credit card while walking through Loyola at St. Mary's because there was a kiosk there and someone's like, "You want a credit card?" And they're like, "Yeah, I do."
Yeah, but they probably had cupcakes, a box of cookies, or like a free gym pass or something.
They got
Totally
a t-shirt
worth
out of it.
Yeah, t-shirt.
And that bruised their credit well into their life.
Why can't I buy a house? Because I got a free box of cookies in the back of Superstore signing up for a PC card.
Exactly. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to attribute that to, but I think it's great. I mean, you and I are both big advocates of property ownership and what it can do for people's lives.
Yep.
I don't know if we want to get into any sort of conversation about wage or wealth disparity between genders or anything like that, but I think it can only be good for people to own more real estate.
Yeah. Actually, it surprised me. I will say, well, you probably agree with this, but in the average residential transaction for a couple, the female is more likely the decision maker than the male.
In a lot of cases. Yeah. They're steering the ship a little bit.
I agree with you. I think it is more like fiscal responsibility that you see within females that allows that to take place. There's probably also a thing in here like more single men own motorcycles, dirt bikes, ATVs, boats, and lifted trucks.
Stupid
in
shit.
50 out of 50 states.
Yeah. Dumb stuff. That's factual.
Yeah.
I know that for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, interesting. I thought that was it's impressive when you think about it, when they're making less money. I also think it shows for a lot of people that you don't necessarily need to be making a bunch of money, or you don't always I think a lot of people who are like, oh, I don't have the opportunity to buy, I don't have the opportunity to buy, or I can't buy, I can't do it alone. I think this kind of shows that there's an opportunity to do that.
I think also statistically there are. We are playing with fire here. Is this bait?
We're really touching on
women tend to be in more secure jobs than men do. More men are either self-employed or commission-based, and it is harder to get financing.
Interesting.
That's statistically true. No one get angry in the comments.
Get angry in the comments. Attack Chandler. I think it's worth it.
So, but there's some pros and cons with that. It's hard to get a mortgage if you're how many dudes do you know? They're like, oh yeah, I run my own thing, but it's all good. I don't pay myself any money, so my girlfriend's gonna co-sign, right? Oh yeah, she has a stable job with a salary. You're selling, whatever on the side, and even if you're making great money, the bank doesn't know about it. So there's those elements of it also.
Do all the dudes talk like that?
I mean, all your friends do.
I do know some people. I've sold some homes to some couples where your girlfriend's the one actually buying the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
I feel like you were trying to trap me there.
I was trying to trap you, and all I got was you offending a bunch of dudes. So our entire audience. But last headline I want to hit you with, and this was a feel-good one, I think, but I feel like some people are going to be like, nah. And it's that Vancouver does a grant every year for a few $1 million that goes towards nonprofits that handle street cleaning in the city of Vancouver, but done by the homeless. So effectively, they're paying homeless people to do the street cleaning in the city. This year, they're operating it from 2.1 million to 2.5 million. It was 1.9 or 1.6 pre-pandemic, so it's gone up a fair bit in the last year. And they're tasked with removing bags of garbage, needles, and feces. So last year in 2022, they removed 34,000 bags of garbage, 110,000 needles, and it just said 21,000 feces. So I'm just I added in ad-lib 21,000 bags of feces.
Yeah.
So
or do they count by the individual piece of feces?
So part of me was like, man, these homeless guys are probably taking.
What was here, a deer? There's 50 pieces of feces here.
Well, if you bag, they probably like chop up. You could just, anyways. I don't know how much they're paying them. So, but at first I was like, this is a good idea. And then as I started to think about it more, especially on the feces topic, I was like, this kind of sucks, and I feel like it's kind of shitty, pun intended, that they're.
That a massive outbreak of pink eye among the homeless population, but
that they I just don't know that they should be getting homeless people to do this. But even though I guess probably a lot of the stuff that they're picking up is from homeless people, or maybe it's more incentivized that they're asking homeless people to bring their garbage in. Or something. I don't know what the idea is, because part of me is like, man, this should be a job. Like if you go to jail, like if you're in jail, like I always felt that if you're in jail, you should be doing something for the community or the economy,
clean up the highways,
and you don't really get a benefit for it because you've lost that privilege, and so now you have to go out and do stuff that people don't really want to do. And so for me, something like this would be that, but I understand it. Like the logistics of it is very difficult because people end up like whatever getting away or whatever, but. I don't know. Like, what's your take on it? You're like, this is a great program. Apparently, every year it goes through like unanimous vote. They always approve it. They drop the money out. There's a couple nonprofits running it. It's been a great success. But again, as I was saying, like, just think about it, like, man, you're homeless, and you're like, oh, well, the only thing the city's doing for me is that if I pick up my shit and bring it in, I'll get like $20. And it's like,
yeah, I mean, I'd be curious, like, are they getting paid by the weight? Like, honestly, like, I don't know how you'd really track this.
Just like slick in a lead bar on the inside.
Yeah. Just following a Great Dane around for a couple days, make some bucks. I think, listen, I think...
Good idea or bad idea?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah?
Yeah. What's, cleaning up the city. Like, think of what the budget is for street sweeping and all that stuff anyway.
They don't have that, so they use all their money towards this.
I mean, I think it's good.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure how I feel about this whole line of questioning.
Like, okay. Yeah, it's just part of me is just a little tripped out because I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like a sad situation where it's like, all right, we'll pay you guys if you do this. And it's like, oh, man, that literally sounds like the worst job. And you've got me picking up used needles and feces.
Yes.
Like, it seems not safe. Mm-hmm. So while I appreciate the potential
earnings,
like
you guys are
like you're setting me up for like maybe a little infection. I might need some antibiotics when I drop these bags off. So I don't know
change,
about
give me
it.
some antibiotics.
Like, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure.
You see what I'm saying?
Next question.
Okay, all right, fine. I would love to hear what someone else thinks because I at first I was like, yeah, and then I was like, wait a second, this sounds like I was gonna say shit, but like this sounds bad. I'm not super keen on it.
Yeah, so let's change gears here from that. And we're gonna go to our key player of the week.
Yeah, before we hop into our topic, our key player of the week this week is Scott Lynn. You know?
Yeah, art dealership.
I was just messing with you, but yeah, CEO of Masterworks. Masterworks is like you were saying, an art dealer, but in the sense it's not more an art dealer, it's an art investor. And what they do is they will buy pieces of art by crowdfunding through their platform online. So it allows everybody the opportunity to buy in on these pieces of art. I'm sure we've all seen a piece of art sell for $30 million and the guy bought it for $6 million. And you're like, wow, once you have money, you make money. And this must be nice to be rich. Well, guess what? They're like, let's get everybody involved on this. And that's what they've done. They've created a platform where anyone can buy in. And they have lots of pieces that they've bought and sold already, made 20, 30, 40% on pieces that they've flipped. And they've shown that over the last 25 years, contemporary art on average has appreciated at 14% in comparison to the S&P 500 at 10% and compared to real estate at 9%. So it's almost 50%. Well, it is more than 50% more appreciation than real estate. And additionally, art on average during high inflationary periods outperforms all of them.
Oh, it goes psycho. Yeah.
It goes absolutely psycho. And so they've been doing very well recently.
That's super cool.
So Scott Lynn, he's our key player of the week, CEO. Obviously, he's got a huge team behind him. He was a technology founder for a lot of years, starting another company called Payability, a digital lending provider. I'm sure he's had other ones prior to that I'm unaware of, but he's been at it for years and years and years. This he came out with in 2017, and it's been going amazing. So check out Masterworks, check out Scott Lynn. I think it's a super cool idea. This crowdfunding is becoming more and more prevalent with all the technology
100%.
that's out there.
It even relates a little bit to these idea of NFTs, that you could have this joint ownership of artwork and then sell it and so on. This is a bit more simple in that it's old school. Everyone pools their money. We own this thing, and then you'd sign off your rights effectively to have it sold as a group. But look at it almost like, I don't want to say like a mutual fund that everyone buys into, but it's to some degree some of that, or a REIT, right? Everyone, gets involved in a REIT, but you'd have more transactional, more turnover. So that's kind of cool.
It's kind of funny is Scott, and this is how most people get into this, was an art collector himself. And he probably was like, damn, I want that piece.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't have $20 million.
And he's probably like, man, I know that I can sell that piece for more in the future.
Exactly. And so since 2018, they've bought around 40 pieces for around $90 million, and they've got an actualized annual return of 32%.
Woo.
So they are
they're
slaying it.
Yeah.
And they target 3 to 10 year holds with their pieces. They're not just buying them to hold on to them forever. They got to keep turning that cash over.
Yeah, of course.
So anyways, check out
like it.
Masterworks. I think they're cool. It's an alternative investment to real estate. But we talk about real estate, so we're going to switch gears back to real estate, and that is what we're going to talk about now, is how do you get into your first multi-unit? We're doing it at a high level. The full explanation can be found on our Patreon, which will be turning into our website very soon. But at a high level, we want to just go over it because I think a lot of you guys are in that place where you're like, you know what? I did really well in the last couple of years on a few of my properties. I've done the refis. I got some cash in the accounts, or I've sold a few and I got cash in my account. And I do want to get back into it, but I'm not interested in just buying another house. I want to buy a purpose-built building.
Yes,
for
we're
a bunch of
talking a
reasons.
true multi.
A true
commercial
multi.
loan, 6 units and above type deal.
Exactly. So I think the first number one thing is getting a good team around you. And that is your
100%.
realtor and your mortgage broker. I think those are the number one pieces. Your realtor is going to help you find that deal. A good one's going to be able to tell you like if these numbers make sense, if it's a bad deal, what's going on there. And a mortgage broker is really going to open your eyes to what's available on the commercial side, because commercial financing is totally different than residential. You're not
They're also
showing
gonna
up and
help
doing
you-
owner-occupied 5% down.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Commercial real estate, the realtor takes on a bit of a different role because, as a lot of you listening would know, in some cases you're out there, you're door knocking, you're finding these opportunities yourself. The realtor becomes more engaged by giving you a bit of arm's length separation from the seller, right? You're going to have some awkward conversations with that seller with respect to, price reductions, environmental assessments, things like that. That it's good to have someone advocating on your behalf.
Why you need 5 extensions?
Yeah, also helping you, prepare the package and go through the mortgage professional, leases, all the sort of pro formas, all these things to help you paint a picture for that mortgage professional. It is really a collaborative effort. It's not the same as like, hey, I found this house on MLS, we're going to go see it. It's a bit different.
Yeah, they'll guide you to what you were just about to say. They're going to guide you with a lot of items, because if you come at it from that angle on your own, a seller's not even going to take you as serious. If you're like, hey,
there's
I'd
that
like to
too,
see
yeah.
all 12 units first, please, and send me all of the leases. And when he sends you a list of expenses, you're going to be like, oh, that's the appraiser didn't accept that. I need you to retype this out in Excel. He's just going to be like, go yourself. Like, there's no chance that they're doing any of that. And there's a good chance you're not going to see all the units really at any point. You may never get into all of them. So you kind of have to prepare yourself for that. And again, having a good agent that's comfortable and experienced with this, they can kind of give you the guidance on how to make an offer. They'll have the communication with the seller. They'll really help work your deal along. And they might have a relationship with the seller where the seller's already sold to them, and they may be able to have like a bit of comfort knowing that, okay, if it's coming from Chandler or Neal or whatever agent you're working with, they know that we're going to make sure the deal gets across the line. And when we say there's an issue with financing, that it means, okay, we need a bit more time, but it's still going to go through. So that's why it's important to have a really, really good team. The next thing is mortgage broker. The one that sold you a few houses or did your last couple of deals isn't necessarily the one. I'm all about staying loyal, but it is a whole different animal to understand commercial and to understand the programs that are available and what banks will lend and on it. Because as much as we say, well, you can't do 5% down anymore, there are actually some cases where you can do 5% down through CMHC programs.
Yep, longer AMs, but what do the rents have to be?
Exactly. There's so many items, and I'd say a mortgage broker is almost one of the most crucial aspects, like biggest parts of your success.
Oh, 100%. You need to get the money. This whole process is about getting the money to buy the purchase of the property initially, and then also an exit strategy to get out of it one day.
Exactly. And so understanding that there's different mortgage brokers and different realtors for each stage of your growth, right?
Yep.
Like you're not going to use the same person that you bought your house with once you get to the point of buying an apartment building. Like
you may, but they have to be a damn good mortgage broker, right? And, we're fortunate to work with a couple here. You guys would have seen them on here, but
100%.
Not all of them can do that. And honestly, not all of them want to. There'll be some smaller mortgage brokers that say, you know what, that's not my cup of tea, right? Because they're longer, harder transactions. They have to do a bit more work. They may actually not want to do it. So you want to make sure you have someone who really knows the ins and outs in that, because their appraisal process is much more complicated. The financing is much more complicated. So you need someone who's experienced with that.
Exactly. And last part will be that both the realtor or the mortgage broker can have deals that come up. They just know because they're doing them all day.
Yeah.
They might have one that falls apart. The next thing, and it's number 2, but it's really part of number 1, and that's having a plan. And again, your realtor and your mortgage broker will help you get there, but that is defined by understanding kind of how much money you have available to you, understanding what your goal is. Like, do you want X money? You need to have a multi-year plan. Like when you started this, you said, I want to have a house every year for the next 10 years, was it?
At first it was, for 10 years, and then I stopped after 5 because I was like, okay, I need to actually scale this up a little quicker. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have to have you have to have goals in place. You need to have a plan on how you're going to get there, how the money's going to come to be. That is so important, because otherwise you can flail. Like if you're like, I just want to see multi-units, you're going to be out looking at places that are 400 a door, places that are 150 a door. You're not going to know what makes any sense. Cap rates are all over the place. Like you got to have a plan. Do you want something you're tearing to bits, something that you're just investing in? Like that's what you need to figure out as well, right when you get started into doing this. Like you shouldn't be out going to try and buy multi if you can't make that plan and those decisions, because you're going to get into it and things are going to fall apart.
Well, also you're going to quickly get a reputation as someone that doesn't close, right? We talked about this before.
Yep.
People are like, oh, how come they brought that to you? Where'd you get that opportunity? It's like, well, people now know that if I say I'm going to go through with a purchase, I go through with it. Because I know what the numbers are, I know what it's worth, I know what it's going to cost to do all these things, and I know I have the ability to close.
Yep.
If you're running around just writing offers, and a lot of people out there do promote that method, is like shoot first and then deal with it afterwards, you're going to burn bridges if you're in a small market. Otherwise, your only alternative is to rotate to other markets, because people will know that you don't close.
Exactly.
Right? So you have to be able to close. And the way you're going to know if you're going to be able to close is if you've run your numbers and you've got a clear plan for that project. What realistically is it going to take? Can I look past I heard online that, some properties you can do as little as 15% down if the numbers hold up. Well, newsflash, in this market, none of the numbers are going to hold up. No one's going to sell your property that can probably finance at 15% down. So you're starting at 25% down, which in these rates right now, based on, you doing your numbers on the back of your thing, like, oh, I got a net operating income of this, and at this cap rate, it's like, no, that's not how the bank's going to run it. That's not how the appraiser's going to run it. What cap rate are they going to use? You need to know, or have a team around you that knows, so you can properly plan how much money you need to actually finance this deal, and then whether or not that's worth it.
100%. I want to add to what you said about shooting out a bunch of offers. I get a lot of clients that ask me how I get certain deals, and it's purely because I'm a closer. People message me because I need you to sell this. They know that I'm going to either buy it myself or I'm going to bring someone to buy it, and we're going to close the deal. We're not going to waste their time, because they probably they're not desperate for money, but I need this money in 6 months. I can't run this thing on market for the next 3 years while people just take crap shots at me all day.
Well, that's the thing. Chances are they went down the rabbit hole for 6 weeks with someone who wasted their time.
Exactly. So being a closer will actually save you money. Now, it doesn't mean closing on stupid deals, but that means if it's a bad deal, you look at it at a high level and you move away. You don't get so horned up that you need to get a building. You stay on it. So really being a serious closer who can make deals happen will actually save you tons of money as you go on and build you a strong reputation, which, like Chandler said, in a smaller market is everything. And and realistically, you on average are working within a small market. Even if you're in Toronto, you're not shopping all of Toronto. You're shopping neighborhoods.
And the beauty thing is, then you get a little bit of leverage, because people come to you like, listen, I want to sell you this building. Like, well, I'm really interested in that building, but you couldn't have contacted me at a worse time. I got this going on. I got that going on. I'll buy it, but I need these terms.
Yep.
Right? They would rather give you beneficial terms than someone else they don't know, other terms that might be simpler for them, but they don't know if it's going to close.
Exactly. The next step, and this is when we do say, I think you shoot a little bit from the hip, but you try and get into as many viewings as you can. If they're on market, go see them. If you hear about them, go see them, because it's good to get an understanding of what's on the market. Again, not expecting that you're going to go see every unit in 12-unit building, but go see the exterior, go see 1 or 2 units, understand the numbers, and request numbers on lots of buildings. Like, you need to educate yourself. So start seeing as many as you can, start seeing as much as you can for numbers. But again, not thinking that you're going to get like some perfectly laid out Excel spreadsheet that fits on like a website every time. It's going to be a mix. So you have to work with that, but you want to see as much of it as you can, because that's the only way you're going to educate yourself to understand. Because even if you don't buy it or don't think the deal is good, when you do see it sell, you're like, okay, like I remember what the numbers were there. That sold for this. I a lot of times do that, and I'll pass up on stuff and I'll see it sell, and I'm like, what is their play? And so then I'll try and keep an eye on what's going on with the building. I'll drive by and see, because I'm like, are they renting? Because there's no money left in it. Like, why would they be doing that? And so sometimes I've been surprised, but then I've also learned some crazy stuff, because here, unfortunately, and I think in a lot of places, you can look up their mortgage details. And so you can almost kind of paint a picture, because you can see sometimes what they did, how they did their construction financing, what bank did it. And also you can then sometimes see, if you wait long enough, you'll see their takeout. And you're like, wait a second, how the hell did they get a takeout like that? That's honestly how I learned a lot of it. I would just call the banks that I would see on those slips and be like, what's the play here? And if you hopefully you get someone that's nice enough that'll tell you, maybe give you an appraiser contact, that kind of thing. So anyways, that's
a good little tip.
That is some pretty secret sauce. You get a lot of that on the Patreon.
Very true.
But that would be the next step. Obviously, the final step is then I think writing an offer. Once you've seen lots, you've educated yourself, your team around you supporting you, you know your numbers, you're in a place to go ahead and make the buy. Then you can start shooting offers out. Again, even if you're super educated and the deal seems great, do everything you can to get every condition in there: environmental, inspection, financing, because there's so many different items that you need to deal with, and some of them can screw you down the line. My very first buy, I was so horny to buy a multi-unit, I didn't put enviro clauses in, and I ended up finishing the buildings, going to get the refinance. They asked for an enviro, I failed, and I ended up having to tear out the basement units, dig out the bottoms of the buildings, take out the dirt, replace them, put it back. Not that long ago. I'm just now getting my refi after 2 years of messing around. And I was fortunate that it was just the dirt. It can get into your water streams and all sorts of other issues. So understanding that is so important. So again, at that point, go through the deal. I don't know if there's any major tips. Like, again, the specific details we really get into on the Patreon, really running through numbers we get into on the Patreon. But here, I don't know if there's any more major details you'd give someone. I think, if you're debating sometimes if you want to sell some properties and start to clean up to go towards something like that, I don't think that's a bad idea. Well, because it becomes a management issue, in my opinion. Yeah. A lot of people are debating, like, oh, what do I do? I have like 4 houses now, 4 duplexes. I got a bunch of equity. And I'm like, well, yeah, you have $150,000 tied up in each of those. Maybe you do sell them.
Yeah, I always tell people, if you can skip the queue and get more doors quicker, always do that, right? So more doors under one roof is better. You want your door to roof ratio to be as high as possible, right? Like, that's just simple ease of management, but also literal costs of maintenance, and the roofs that have to be fixed each time. So if you can skip the queue to get there, it's definitely worthwhile doing. The other thing to sort of keep in mind with this stuff as well is, you need to educate yourself. And again, we go into this on the Patreon about the financing options, the VTBs, the promissory notes, all of those things, private lending, because most of these deals right now, they don't hold water on their own. You have to do something creative, usually with the seller's help on the financing. And the more you can educate yourself on that, the more you have a team around you. Again, this is where the realtor can sell that to the seller and build that relationship and explain why. You're going to have more success. But if you can't go there confidently with that plan, the they're not going to feel good about the transaction. They're not going to think you're going to close. Or even if they do give you a VTB, they're not going to have the confidence that you're going to be able to pay them back. Yep. Right? So we get into that again all on the Patreon. But that really high level is sort of how you take it next level from the small scale, multi-unit residential to true multi-unit, 6 units and above commercial financing.
Exactly. Really, to boil it down, it's your team around you. We can all find the listings. It's your team around you. And one thing to consider, make sure the people around you have actually done it. My good old line of, you can't learn how to buy a Rolls Royce from someone who doesn't have a Rolls Royce. That, again, it's not specifically that, but it's the main concept of, it's hard to learn how to do something or be taught by somebody who hasn't actually done what they're preaching. Yeah,
but what if I write multi-unit specialist on my business card?
That also counts. So you can use that person.
That person's good too.
Yeah, that person's good. You want to make sure their business card and their email signature is on fleek, and if it is, you're good to go.
Yeah. Cool. Listen, guys, thanks as always for listening. Sorry we took a week off. We missed you. Hope you missed us back. Like, follow, subscribe.
Thanks for listening.
See ya. Thanks so much for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. Don't forget to subscribe. But also check us out on Instagram and TikTok. You can find all the links below. Thanks again for checking us out.